Hi, welcome to the small shed. This week we're back on the tail section trying to knock it into shape. See you in a minute. Now I'd taken the tail section from a series of bits of plywood up to basically the right shaped piece of foam and wood last time we did anything on it. Time now to start the long and laborious process of actually shaping it to the pretty much the exact shape I want, and that will involve an awful lot of sanding and scraping and refilling and resanding and so on, and it's taken in reality about 6 months to get it to a stage where it's ready for fiberglass. So see how we've gone about that. So I'm going to do the plastering in very small lumps, small areas at a time, particularly when I get up on top, because that way I can get some control over the two sides matching one another. If I just cover the whole thing over, it becomes a fairly large lump that you've got to try and get controlled. And I'd rather just, as I say, deal with it small segments. This base is not so much of a problem because it's pretty much a flat grade from one side to the other. So I'm just going to pile some filler onto it. Just mix a batch up now and make a start with that. Probably could do with a spot of PVA on the foam, but we'll see how we get on. I think I was alright with the when I did the cowl, just using it flat on top like that, but we'll see how it goes on. And then it's a fairly long waiting time for it to dry, and again likewise fairly long time sanding it, and very messy. If I thought this was messy sanding the actual foam down, I think this is far worse, but needs must. Yeah, I think that'll be fine. I think it'll need a couple of coats, this, because even now it's sagging a little bit with the weight of the plaster, so I think I will need to come back and do a little bit more work on it, but if we can get the main base coat on it, that will be useful. Now this has had a couple of days to dry now, so I'm going to start the long and extremely tedious process, if not messy as well, of sanding, filling, checking, shaping, sanding, filling and so on, which will no doubt go on for a day or two until we can get somewhere near the right shape. Just done a first pass with the sander on the tail, and we're starting to get there. There's one or two places where I'm too high with the foam, and that's going to need to be just gouged out a bit and then filled back up to surface. But by and large we're starting to get the shape, and it's much easier to refine it in sections, as I mentioned before. If I now concentrate on the headrest part, get that gouged out, refilled, sanded, and to a consistent shape, and then we can move on to perhaps one shoulder and then the other. This one's worse, and then towards the back there's a bit more shaping to be done down there to get that to resolve itself right. But it's starting to look a little bit more like a tail section than it did before, and I'm beginning to sort of see the shape beneath the mess. Right, we're about 2 weeks in on the tail. It's been a sort of succession of hack out a bit, fill it, hack out a bit, fill it, fill a bit more, sand a bit more. We're getting to roughly the right shape, but I'm still having these areas where the foam breaks through because I'm slightly high with it. And I'm rapidly coming to the conclusion that that may not be a problem, because the whole thing is going to be wrapped in silver tape anyway. So it's more important just to get the basic shape right and fill all the holes like these that appear when you get down to the sort of levels that you want to get down to. There's still a few depressions, so I think I'm going to give it one last pass with those. Trouble is, it takes so long to dry, particularly at this time of year. I did this last application of filler about 2 weeks ago, and it's still, when I get down, it's still a bit damp in there, and it starts to sort of clog up the sandpaper when I'm using it. But I think the shape is nearly right. There's a little bit of finessing to do. You just stand back and keep working at it. There's a bit of work to do down here to get that finished right, and there's the piece underneath which I haven't got onto yet. But I'm getting to the point where it's not big mixes of filler to get myself back to where I want to be. We've got a hard shell, albeit not very thick in places. I may then give it a quick coat of PVA just to try and seal the surface a bit before we get the silver tape over the top of it, and then we put release agent on that and start glass fibering. And again, I've got to get some tape organised because I'm getting low on. I've only got a couple of rolls of that, which I don't think will do all of that. So we're moving forward. It's just a very slow, laborious sand, stand back, look at it, sand, to get the sort of contours. There's a slight ridge there and a slight ridge there that I need to just work on now. Get it looking right, left to right. Take out some of the bumps, and again it's slightly difficult to tell if there's a bit of dampness in there as to whether it's a depression or whether it's just a bit that's still damp. So we'll keep working at it. Right, I've reached my end of my patience with this now. It's been lying around in the shed for a couple of months now while I get the various layers of stuff on it, and it doesn't matter how many times I go at it, I still see something that needs filling and smoothing. It's really not much point because it's going to be covered in this silver tape before I put the glass fibre on it. It'll be under 2 or 3 millimeters of glass fibre mat and resin, so it hasn't got to be as smooth and perfect as the buck had to be. It's the right shape. I'm happy with the shape. I could go on forever with it, but at the moment the shed is knee deep in white dust. The vacuum cleaner is just about ready to give up because it's choked with it. The air quality monitor is saying give up because you're all going to die. So it's time to move it on. I'm going to just put a sealer coat on it. I've got some clear varnish in the garage that's quick drying, water-based stuff. Just want to get a decent finish on it because I'm fairly certain that if I try and put this tape on, it'll just pick up the dust off it and fall straight off. particularly with the plaster finish. So I'm just going to work my way through these tins and half tins of varnish and just work my way around it and seal it all first, and then we can get some cloth on order and resin and hopefully get the shell on this. Whether I'll be able to get it off again is a totally different matter. I'm not sure at all, but we'll see once we get into this. But the first thing to do is to just get it coated with something. I suspect that I'll have a job to get the bottom rear section off it, because it's sort of an enclosed space and you can't get in very well. I think the sides will probably pop okay when we strip the glass fibre off it, but we will worry about that when we get there. If the worst comes to the worst, I might have to cut a section off it from underneath, because on the real thing there's a join all the way around that bottom edge anyway. If I can strip it off without destroying anything of the mould, so much the better, but if not, we can take the mould to pieces. But so the time to worry about that is when we get there, and I'm nowhere near that yet. So let's just get some of this stuff, get it on it. As I can see, despite having vacuumed it, it's picking up bits of dust already and throwing it into the air, so it's clearly needs this to get like a hard shell on the finish before we try and put the tape on. But it uses, I was just trying to find some old emulsion paint. I've got loads and loads of tins of matte and satin emulsion in the garage, and I thought that satin would be the best, but every tin I go to has got about 1/4 of an inch in the bottom and it's almost dry, so it's given us a chance to have a bit of a clear out in the garage as well. But this is really getting to be a nuisance. It's on the floor, it's in the way, on the bench it's in the way. As I say, every time I brush past it my trousers get covered in white powder. So it's time to get it sorted. Just take a long while because of this constant wait, particularly when the weather hasn't been that good. For every coat of plaster you put on it, it then takes 2 or 3 days to dry to a state that it can be used or can be worked on, if you like. So I'm going to get myself a cloth because I'm throwing this round a bit in here. Try and keep the floor reasonably tidy. I should have put the cloth under it, the big blue mat, but never mind. It's not 100% symmetrical, I don't think, but I'm working on the assumption that you can't see both sides at once, so no one will ever know except just us. Looks like only one of these tins will be enough. I think it seems to go a long way. Beauty of this is it'll be dry in about half an hour at most. Sure enough, within half an hour it's dry. Just going to start putting some of the tape on. I've got some more rolls on order. Don't think I've got enough to do all of it at the moment, but we can make a start. It's pretty awful stuff to use because it's so thin and very fragile, but doesn't really matter. It's a bit like tin foil in that you can just rub it flat if you want to, and even if there's a crease in it, it will flatten out. But it's quite hard to get a reasonably good line on it, but really all it's there for is to give a barrier and stop the epoxy getting into anything. And hopefully we can put a bit of wax on it as well. Rub out, and again bear in mind it's going under 3 layers of cloth. I just don't want it to have a surface that anything can grip to really. Right, so that's got the Cyclekart tail section pretty much sorted. I'm not going to start and lay the fiberglass up yet because it's too cold at the moment to get fiberglassing going. I could do it in the garage, but it would stink the house out. I'm really waiting for the weather to warm up a bit. It's not that urgent, but at least we've now got the buck made. So hope the video was of interest. Look forward to seeing you next week when we'll be doing something different on the Cyclekart. I'll see you then. Bye.